Good morning, everyone. I hope you've all been well and powering through this semester. Today, I will focus on the institutional lackings of our healthcare system based on gender. A little recap. We've come a long way from the 3 waves of feminism, which have improved our quality of life in virtually every way, from political acknowledgement to societal reform, and now individual expression. There have been great strides throughout history. Although there is much more to be done to move further towards equality, we need to go back to the start and take action to remodel some key institutions that have been lacking, if not resisting, reform for the better. I will be focusing on the lack of women's menstrual health care and the disregard for those of the LGBTQ+ community in our medical institution. Though there have been many steps in the innovation of our healthcare system, please acknowledge that though progress is good, there is still much more to be done. The healthcare institution has largely been based off the binary anatomy of men and women. This already brings up a basis for discrimination due to biological determinism, which fundamentally skews the construction of medical practitioners' mindsets. Such an integral institution enforces discrimination against those deemed subordinate or not of the gender binary placed upon healthcare. To illustrate this, I have 3 examples of disparities in treatment for women because of deliberate ignorance, a lack of research, and a lack of care for those who are not biologically male. Firstly, as children grow up, they are socialized to differentiate from the other sex. Girls more than boys due to the variety of adverse effects that come with attaining one's period. In the study, Menstrual Health and Period Poverty Among Young People Who Menstruate in the Barcelona metropolitan area, Spain, gives a clear indication of life socialized to accommodate men. According to the study, menstrual health is pertinent to overall good health for those who menstruate. Unfortunately, because of the pressured taboo on the subject matter, menstruation and periods have been largely kept as a quiet secret for women and those who menstruate. This leads to the depression of one's own education, management, and empathy on the subject matter, especially for women in poverty. Women are taught to do this, socialized at the very start to perceive this phase of life as embarrassing and to be hidden from society. The consequence of this matter spans exponentially more than merely hiding a week's worth of blood. The outcome of this type of socialization ends up inhibiting the well-being of those who menstruate. No sick leave, minimal education, hushed discourse upon the subject matter, and much more. Most importantly, though, because of the hushed norm, many medical advances have not been made to aid in the management of menstruation and vastly inhibits proper care from hospital institutions. The study goes much deeper into the effects of stigma on those with lower income. The paper is very informative, and I suggest you take a look at it when you can. Building off the socialization into inequality, this grows into the systematic healthcare bias. Healthcare workers do not only largely disregard menstruation, but also women and their pain in general. According to the blog Women and Pain, Disparities in Experiences and Treatment, women wait an average of 65 minutes before receiving an analgesic for acute abdominal pain in the ER, while men wait only 49 minutes. This average is in the US. Furthermore, women are 7 times more likely than men to be misdiagnosed and discharged in the middle of having a heart attack. The list goes on in the blog, but it is suffice to say that the obvious disparity in quality care from healthcare institutions is largely based on gender. The systematic processes and procedures of analysis on patients is greatly prejudiced, and not because doctors don't care, but because of how they were taught to diagnose and treat. Again, the medical system is based on binary anatomy that allows for the ignorance of women's and those outside of the binary's health. Finally, if you think it's bad for women, it's worse for non-cis women, those who do not identify as women or is deemed quote-unquote not feminine enough to be treated as women. This is clearly stated in the journal Effects of Gender Identity on Experiences of Healthcare for Sexual Minority Women, which states that women of the LGBTQ+ community are receiving far less tests, treatment, and welcome from the healthcare institution because of their gender identity or sexual orientation. This leads to higher risk of harms such as cancer or sex-related infections in those outside of the binary. This is due to the lack of change of systematic teaching from solely biologically binary to non-binary associations. Again, the medical institution is based off the binary anatomy that does not include non-binary related issues. The institution does not adequately accommodate for women and the LGBTQ+ community, and therefore ensues inequality and disparity. Overall, it is obvious that there are many levels to gender-based inequalities in the medical field. This stems from the focus on binary anatomy and fails to sufficiently include issues that do not prominently affect men. May I remind you, though, there are lots of progress in the making. The main issue is that the system of medical education is capitalized for men, but not for others, which has persisted for quite a while. The aspects of healthcare that may not be common for cisgendered men are greatly overshadowed and set aside due to early socialization of differentiation, enforcement through medical procedure, and foundational rigidity that is hard to implement change for. Of course, this is only my perspective on the disparities in medical institutions based on gender. I would love to hear or read your take on this topic. Here are some questions to ponder about throughout the break. And finally, here are all 3 of my journals and blogs that I used as examples today. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the semester break.